Tonight on America's Hope, we'll talk to the father of a hostage who is still in captivity held by Hamas. That story coming up on America's Hope. It starts right now. From the NTD Global Headquarters in New York, I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this hour. We do hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. For the father that we're going to introduce to you tonight, what matters most to him is the safety, the safe return, I should say, of his son, taken into captivity by Hamas fighters, terrorists, on October 7th from Kibbutz Nir Oz. He has not seen or heard from his son since that time. So we'll hear from him to hear his story. And then later in our program, we'll be talking to a group of African pastors and lay members who have been living in Israel for 25 to 35 years. We'll hear from their heart, their love for Israel, and their warning to the world about the threat of radical ideology. Let's get started. My first guest tonight is someone who has experienced firsthand what took place on October 7th, and we're going to hear it through his eyes. We realized that 4 hostages were rescued in dramatic fashion during a daytime rescue over the weekend, where Israeli Defense Forces, their special forces, went in to an area in Gaza, and they were actually able to get 4 hostages and return them home. But there are still 120 hostages still missing. And we are now 8 months removed from October 7th. Jonathan Dekel Chen has a son who is among those who were taken against their will by Hamas terrorists at the Kibbutz Nir Oz. And he joins me now to talk about his personal concerns for not just his son, but the other hostages who remain missing. And Jonathan, as I can see on your shirt there, bring them home now, which is actually the cry for so many family members of hostages still missing, still being held in captivity that Hamas has not released. Talk to me about where things are in the wake of that dramatic rescue that took over the weekend, and what you went through as you saw that, and you're still saying, but my son is still missing.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. You're right. There was a dramatic and extraordinarily heroic rescue mission over the weekend of those 4 Israeli hostages, young people who were attending on October 7th that outdoor music festival. That's maybe 10 miles from my home on Nir Oz and my family's home on Nir Oz. So I was overjoyed for them and their families. As we are now learning, although they seem to look okay, for the bits and pieces that we all saw them on TV, we now know from the doctors who are treating them and other sources that they came back in really bad shape, both physically and psychologically. And so that's really disturbing. As far as my concerns go, I think if you'll allow me to take a step back,
Please.
Earlier in that same week, if you and your viewers recall, there were a total of 5 pronouncements by the IDF about the death of 5 hostages or 5 Israelis, 4 whom we know died in Hamas custody and were alive at least until early December, because a hostage video or 2 hostage videos were shown with those 4 older men begging for their lives and unfortunately being forced to participate in Hamas's psychological warfare. Three of those four older men were from my kibbutz and were dear friends, two of the three dear friends of mine for over 40 years. We need to remember that. That's as much, if not more, of the reality as this hostage rescue. Also, on the same day, earlier in that same day, the IDF announced the death of a much younger man, 35-year-old member of our kibbutz, Dolev Yehud, who was one of my son's best friends. But his body was discovered very, very late, only a few weeks ago, on our kibbutz. We had hoped that that skeleton was of one of the terrorists who was killed on the kibbutz, but only through forensics were told, and just very recently, that it was this wonderful, wonderful young man, father of four, who was murdered along with 50 other people on our kibbutz, a kibbutz of 400 people. And 50 of them were murdered on October 7th. Many of those bodies, their corpses were taken to Gaza. At the moment, Kibbutz Nir Oz has 35 of the 125 hostages still remaining in Hamas custody. 35 of them are from my kibbutz. We know now that 13 of them have already been murdered. We don't know about the rest, and quite honestly, I do not know. My family does not know if Segui is still alive. So, the rescue, to answer your question directly, and this rescue joins two other rescues that have been executed by the IDF since October 7th. And so 7 hostages have been returned through military action, but they are absolutely the exception that proves the rule. The rule is that military action alone will not get these hostages home. The exception is that these 7 people, not coincidentally, were all being held above ground. We know that almost all, if not all, of the hostages taken from the kibbutzim in my region, and we're talking about nearly 100, are all being held underground. And there's simply no way, there's no army, unfortunately, in the world who knows how to rescue hostages alive from a massive terror tunnel network.
You know, Jonathan, as you're talking, I'm remembering what it was like to walk through Kibbutz Be'eri, which is near your kibbutz, and not being able to get to the tunnels because of the dangerous operations that are being conducted there by the IDF in Gaza. But as you're talking, I'm hearing you talk about friends that you've known for 40 years. Well, you've also known your son, and you do not know the status of your son who was taken captive that day on October 7th. Talk to me about Segui and the kind of son you raise to become the man he is.
Well, Segui is my 35-year-old little guy. He is a beautiful, beautiful person. Lights up any room that he enters. He, on October 7th, was the father of 2 beautiful little girls, at the time aged 2 and 6. His wife at that time was 7 months pregnant.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far of America's Hope. If you'd like to see it in its entirety, just click on the link below. Thanks for watching.